Sabbath. Do you feel restful? Probably not. But that's the point of discussing the Sabbath. We don't need to talk about rest when we're feeling rested. We don't need to be encouraged to take time when we have nothing on our schedule, to take a break on holiday. It's in the middle of the busyness. It's in the middle of tension and being stressed and being overwhelmed and having a lot of things thrown at us that the task of rest becomes a discipline, even a law, a rule, a command. And we have to take intentionality about this discipline, because rest is part of what we are given by God, what we need, and what we don't often make space for in our lives. This picture here is a moment of Sabbath for me during the first quarter of my own MDiv studies, back actually in a previous century. A friend of mine, sitting there on the right, invited me to go on an adventure. He invited some others as well, but I was the only one to take up the offer because the adventure was rather adventurous. Let's go to an island, rather offshore, Southern California. It's about a 4 to 5 or more hour boat trip at the time. They've gotten faster boats since then. To square mile, Channel Island, part of the Channel Island National Parks. There's 5 islands you can go to. This is Santa Barbara Island. On the highest hill on this small island, surrounded by Pacific Ocean. Keep going west, you won't hit anything till you hit Japan, or so. In the middle of the quarter, near the beginning, he invited me to go on this trip, and I was taking 4 classes at the time. I was very busy and overwhelmed, but I needed a break, a way of escape, and this sounded like an adventure, and it certainly was. I realized when I got there how much I needed this space, this time, this beauty, this experience of nature. Sea lions and birds, and there's nothing on this island except some campsites and 10 other campers. And they drop you off and they leave you for a few days and they pick you up. You have to bring water and food and everything, and you just spend time. You just spend time walking and resting and talking and laughing and enjoying, and then you're brought back to the real world. But for me, this was a time of Sabbath. Every year since then, for about 11 years, I've missed the last few years. I went to one of the Channel Islands, and I've now been to all of them twice. And this is what I think of when I think of Sabbath, this great break in the middle of life, forced to be away and then brought and thrown into the bit of nature as a way of renewal, reminder. Sometimes I've gone in times where life is going well and it's been the celebratory time, like I went for my birthday a couple times. And other times I've gone where I was so overwhelmed by stress and worry and concern. My car was stolen near the beginning of a quarter, and I had no transportation. I was a commuter student, and I was feeling overwhelmed, and he offered to pay for my trip. I didn't have any money, and he offered to pay, and it became this huge time of renewal, refreshment, and restoration, and insight into God's work in my life. So these islands all have this specific memory, a Sabbath memory. So think of your own memory of Sabbath, both in specific times and specific places. Where is your place of rest, your place of escape, your place of renewal? Let's enter into this discussion of Sabbath, thinking about God's Sabbath for us. probably wondering why I'm showing you a video of seals. More properly, these are elephant seals. And this video was taken on another Channel Island, San Miguel Island, a number of years ago, 2009 or so. And when I think of Sabbath, this video often also comes to mind. These elephant seals. These are elephant seals females, more specifically. Probably don't know much about elephant seals. San Miguel Island is a place where elephant seals come to breed and then come to give birth at different times of the year. So the rest of the year they live in Antarctica. Now, I don't have a map posted here, but you probably realize and understand that Antarctica is not necessarily near the California coast. And as a Channel Island, San Miguel is the northernmost of the Channel Islands, so it's pretty far offshore, but still basically near the California coast. These spend their life, most of their life, near Antarctica. Then when it comes time to breed, they swim up from Antarctica to come here, and a few other islands and a few other places. But San Miguel Island is one of the biggest breeding areas. So they come up here to breed, and they swim back down to Antarctica. Then when it's ready to get time to give birth, they swim back up from Antarctica. They give birth. They raise their baby. During the time they raise their baby, they don't eat. They survive off the fat that they've stored up in their journeys and before they gave birth. Raising a baby seal is a dangerous business at times because they have to be protecting the seal. They have to be feeding the seal. So they're going and getting food and giving food to the seal, and they're protecting the baby from different things as the baby then learns how to go into the ocean for the first time. There are sharks out here and other dangerous creatures that would love to eat a baby seal. So those mothers take care. They're very vigilant. And then comes the moment in which the baby seals are big enough and strong enough and secure enough that the babies swim off, presumably to go back to Antarctica. And for a few weeks, after their babies have left, these elephant seal mothers do this, what I showed you in the video. They lay on the beach and they sleep. They get up, they go and get some fish every so often, feast, but they rest. They replenish their supplies, they renew themselves. Such a symbol of Sabbath. They're built into the very fabric of their being is this time of rest, this great moment. And take a video. You don't get too close because they get up and get disturbed, but in the meantime they are just perfectly relaxed amidst a year in life that is filled with the rest of the time of constant busyness. This is their chance. Sabbath for elephant seals too. Sabbath is the festival of creation. Sabbath is the rest of God. Sabbath is the hope for the world. Fourth, Sabbath is the rhythm of life. Let's look at these. But first, from Jürgen Moltmann. The goal and completion of every Jewish and every Christian doctrine of creation must be the doctrine of the Sabbath. For on the Sabbath and through the Sabbath, God completed his creation. And on the Sabbath and through it, men and women perceive as God's creation the reality in which they live and which they themselves are. The Sabbath opens creation for its true future. On the Sabbath, the redemption of the world is celebrated in anticipation. The Sabbath is itself the presence of eternity and time, and a foretaste of the world to come. The observance of the Sabbath became the identifying mark of Jews in exile, and in the same way, the doctrine of the Sabbath of creation becomes the identifying mark of the biblical doctrine of creation, distinguishing it from the interpretation of the world as nature. It is the Sabbath which manifests the world's identity as creation, sanctifies it, and blesses it. Sabbath, too, is creation theology and eschatology gathered together. Shabbat Shalom. When we speak of Sabbath, we can't forget the idea that the Sabbath is still itself a core expression of Jewish religious and cultural life. So let's also talk about the Jewish Sabbath first. Have a restful peace. That's what Shabbat Shalom means literally. Have a restful peace. What a beautiful phrase. Sabbath is the center of Jewish life. The only festival actually included in the Ten Commandments. Go and feast. Go and rest. What a wonderful commandment. It's also one of the pillars of Judaism, if we can talk about Judaism having pillars, alongside circumcision and food and purity laws. It's the way that the Jewish people throughout the centuries, whether or not they had a temple, and so for many, many years, and certainly for a couple of thousand years, the temple has been gone, and yet Jewish people have maintained their sense of identity in the midst of other cultures. And Sabbath was a key expression of that. Sabbath includes two elements, rest and liberation. Exodus 20 indicates Sabbath as a day of rest, reflecting God's rest we talk about in Genesis. Deuteronomy 5 indicates Sabbath as a reminder of the day of the freedom of Egypt. They are to rest as a way of honoring the idea that God freed them from Egypt. To honor God's laws and commandments is a celebration and an indication of God's work in liberation. Sabbath begins at sundown. That's how the Jewish days work, sundown to sundown. They're not the midnight to midnight days that we have in our calendar. It's sunset to sunset. So the Sabbath is celebrated on what is our Friday evening, but that's at sunset, that's the beginning of Saturday, the beginning of Sabbath. It's the beginning of the seventh day. Preparation for the Sabbath is on Friday before sundown, as no work can be done after sundown. At sunset, the mother lights 2 candles, says the Sabbath prayer, invites Queen Sabbath, and the festival. This time the Sabbath begins officially. But it's not as much fun for me to talk about it.
In the Torah, God creates Shabbat. God even has to create the concept of rest. God creates the world in 6 days, creates the trees, the plants, the animals, even humankind. And then afterwards it says that God rested on the 7th day and sanctified it. Shabbat was a commandment given to Adam and Eve, which is prior to the Jewish people. We didn't even exist as a people yet. God gave the Shabbat to humanity.
Once we light the candles, I often will think of something that I'm grateful for.
Some of the big things that we are not allowed to do on Shabbat is write. Any kind of writing would be prohibited. All of our cooking and food preparation has to be finished on Friday afternoon before sundown.
We don't look at our cell phones, we don't write emails, we don't drive in the car to run an errand. My kids don't even ask for television or computer games or anything like that. We love to sing Shalom Aleichem because it's a beautiful melody and it means that we're inviting the angels into our house, blessing them and sending them on their way.
I love blessing my children. My wife and I bless our children every single Friday night. It really teaches me what it means to be a father. And I think it's the ritual of the blessing that creates that sacred moment. In society, oftentimes we measure our success by the things that we have built. And the lesson of the Shabbat teaches us that it's when you stop building. It's about those more interior kinds of things, the things about the working on your soul, the working on your friendships, on your relationships. Those things are really the important things in life, and those are the things that we are going to be remembered by.
One of the rituals that we do on Shabbat that has a lot of meaning for me spiritually it's called Nitilat Yadayim, which is the ceremonial washing of the hands. The idea of lifting up our hands to do God's work or spiritual work rather than, our hands are doing mundane things. You
have the same eating of bread, if you will, on a Thursday also happens on Shabbat. But when you do the special prayers around it, you're sanctifying it. And now it's a vehicle or a tool to appreciate what God has given us. There's something about the eternal that over the day of Shabbat we can connect with, we can become part of. And then we take that, and then it informs our next week. The idea of taking 24 hours off from constant need to create, to build, to do more, and just to be able to reflect, this is a universal gift for everyone to be able to take advantage of.
It's the 7th day of a week. We have Shabbat like a holiday because when God created the world, He He created the world on 6 days, and then on the seventh day of the week, he rested. So every seventh day of the week, we rest to follow what he did.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. Heavenly Father, we ask our blessing on our household. Keep us free from grief, shame, and care, and may the Sabbath peace reign.
Sabbath, from Friday afternoon till Saturday night when the sun sets, there are restrictions that limit one's various categories of work, which include everything from writing with a pencil to driving in one's car, are severely limited or not allowed in order to create an atmosphere of rest and tranquility. And that also includes the going to synagogue for several hours in the morning and the mandated rest period, which is a wonderful blessing to know that every week you have a 24-hour period where you cannot work, you cannot do anything.
In Scripture, you see this. Source of Sabbath. Genesis 2:1-3. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. God blessed, made it holy, and God rested. Did God need rest? It's a theological question, but he rests anyhow. Even God rests. Why does God rest? Think about that for a little bit. In Exodus 16, we read the story of manna. People of Israel were hungry. They didn't have anything to eat, and they complained, and God sent manna as a way to feed them. And he said, for 6 days I will give you manna. Don't collect any more than you need. Don't collect for the next day, because it will go rotten. So each day they collected the manna they needed for the day that God provided. But he said, on the sixth day, collect also for the Sabbath, because I don't want you to collect on the Sabbath. And so those who listened to this commandment, on the sixth day they collected and did the work and gathered enough for 2 days, and it didn't go rotten. And some of those at first certainly didn't listen. They thought, well, we'll just go out and collect what we can. And none was there on the Sabbath. God rests. God allows us to rest. God allows us to experience the bounty we need to take care of ourselves on the Sabbath. He says rest. Exodus 20:8-11. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to your Lord your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or your daughter, your male or your female slave, your livestock, or the alien residents in your town. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. So it's not only that we rest, it's that we don't have other people do the work so that we rest. We don't make our peace dependent on someone else's busyness or frenzy. We don't make our peace dependent on someone else's burden. We who seek peace invite peace. We share peace. We pass peace. We rest and invite rest. And instead of resonating frenzy and busyness, we resonate stillness and rest and renewal. Leviticus 25 talks about the Sabbath in a way that's self-similar across scales. Every 7 days, take a rest. Every 7 years, let the land fallow. Give the land a rest. Every 7 times 7 years, so 49 years, we have the year of Jubilee. And in this, slaves are freed. The land is blessed. There's this huge year-long celebration of renewal, land that has been sold and returned to the people. So that basically the structure of society is reset so that there is peace and renewal in the land. The ultimate Sabbath. New Testament. We see a suggestion where there's a negative view on Sabbath, not because itself is wrong. I mean, remember, Jesus fulfills the law, but because of how the meaning had become distorted. That which was intended to rest became yet another burden. It was used as yet another expression of power, as a way of making people yet more worried about religious leaders. No, it's not supposed to be like that. When we say rest, we mean rest. Worship should never be a tool for healing people. Jesus fulfills the law. He doesn't abolish it. Jesus fulfills the law of rest so that we can truly rest in light of God's salvation. Think of the image of Jesus in the boat during the storm. The storm is frenzied and causing chaos, and the disciples are worried, and Jesus is there taking a nap. It's a great image of Sabbath. In the midst of the storm, Jesus rests because Jesus has faith in the provision and security of God. And Jesus offers this rest. Jesus offers this healing. This picture is one of self-similarity across scales. If you zoom in on the picture, triangles upon triangles, and always the same, and that's the image of our life. Self-similar across scale. We're called to rest in small moments. We're called to rest in regular moments. We're called to rest in big moments. The course of our life developing this rhythm that is the rhythm of life itself. God has a rhythm in creation. Creation has a rhythm. And rhythm requires rest. Sometimes short rest in the midst of things. Sometimes longer rests. Sometimes half rest. Sometimes full rest. Sometimes quarter rest. Sometimes eighth rest. Does this terminology sound familiar?
Hi. You caught me playing to the fog. It's one of my many friends. Today, I'd like to talk about the importance of silence. I'm going to use an AC/DC song for this example, just because every now and again you hear people, especially some guitar players, they play, and I'm using Howard Hell as an example. They'll play and do this. Which is all well and good, but it's important to have the silence in a song. It's very important to have silence and breaks in music, because then you get a definitive verse and chorus. Like, I'll show you what I mean. Like in Howard Hell, you get that. So that's got the gaps in it, and that's definitively a verse. And because it's got the space, and it's just guitar and drums, there's a lot of space there. And when you get to the chorus and the band kicks in, it's really big. It's a fuller sound than it is without the silence. If you know what I mean. Like for instance, I'll play it through, and you hope be able to hear. You know. Now it's really full. It's really full, and it's really important not to add too much, because then what you're doing, you're kind of detracting from the song, and you're taking away, instead of, like, you know. And it's not all about adding. You can do that in your guitar solo, you can add loads, but what you've already got to do, you've got to really kind of think, you know, you've got to serve the song and not your ego more than anything else. You've really got to serve the song. So anyway, just a little quick video on that, and I hope you get what I mean in that. Silence is golden. It's just important to kind of, like, you know, retain that silence, especially in songs like that. Don't add too much. It's not necessary. If it's not necessary, don't do it. Anyway, see you again.
Rest punctuates our activity. Rest gives what we do more meaning because we have more strength, we have more energy. It's a contrast. We're not trying to just flood life with too much stuff. So rest actually gives bigger meaning to our acts. Rest also motivates our activity. When we rest, our brain continues to work behind the scenes, but it's recovering, it's renewing. Our body is resting and renewing so that when we do act, it's not something that it becomes a burden. We become renewed in our sense of calling, renewed on our sense of purpose, oriented and efficient in our activities. When I teach, when I'm busy with study, with class development, everything. There's often this impression that I have to constantly do and do and do. But what I realized in my PhD studies was that this pressure to do and do and do oftentimes resulted in me just having inefficient work. I would do something out of just this, since I had to do something, and it wouldn't end up being as good, or it would take longer. If I actually took time off, or took a day off, a full day off at times. That was a discipline I learned to do during my MDiv, take a full day off. When I got back to it, I did things much more efficiently, much quicker, and much better. So it wasn't that I lost time at all. It's by taking time off, I gave more meaning, more punctuation, more motivation to the activity once I got to it. So rest helps our activity be efficient rather than frenzied. We think sometimes that if we just do something, that is what we're called to do. That's not the purpose. That's not the calling of God. That's not the way the Spirit works. The Spirit isn't looking for us to offer these sacrifices to God simply so that we can, show how much we do and give this long list. The Spirit wants us to be obedient. And the obedience, it brings with it grace and efficiency and purpose and meaning and value. Frenzy brings with it chaos and alienation and frustration and exhaustion. Are our activities efficient and filled with grace, or are our activities frenzied and filled with chaos? How do you feel about that day? How do you feel about your experience right now? Well, maybe you need to take a rest. Because we often mistake busyness with productivity. We often mistake what we want to do for God with what God wants us to do. And God wants us to rest, first of all. And then in resting, we listen to God. We learn from God. We orient ourselves in light of God. And we offer the things we do to God in this power of the Spirit. We begin with obedience, and then we enter into productivity in the power of the Spirit, rather than productivity and activity in the power of our own assumptions. Serve the song, as he said, not your ego. That is such an essential statement for ministry. We get so caught up in what we think we have to do and what other people expect of us and what we're doing in terminology relating to God, but really is about our trying to have meaning or purpose or value or justify ourselves. We're not serving the song of God, the way of Christ. So serve the song, not your ego. Worship is rhythm. In music, there are rests. Music is the music of life. We're called to have rests. Music with rest includes rhythm and includes movement. Music with rest allows the chords to take shape. It allows the melody and the harmony to take shape. It allows the listener to be drawn along. Both the musician and the listener are resting. Like with music, Sabbath rest creates rhythm in our life. And rhythm in our life, Sabbath rest doesn't have to be somber. So here's a little video on rests in music.
Hello people, hello friends. This is the show where the fun never ends. We've got beats and notes and everything that you'll ever need to know to play or sing. Come on in, don't be shy. Luigi's here and Mike's the guy. With all our friends, you're sure to be in the know. So welcome to the music, welcome to the music, welcome to the music show. You'll go. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the music show, starring me, Luigi's Baton.
And co-starring me, Mike, the microphone.
With special guest star, Cadence the drummer.
Hello, everybody.
And meet our new friend, Fret the guitar. I said our new friend, Fret the guitar. Oh, I forgot. Fred is a little camera shy.
And he worries a lot.
Maybe we can all help him out if we give him a big round of applause.
Great idea. Come on, kids, all together now. Let's give it up for our new friend, Fred the guitar.
Oh my, this all makes me very nervous, but I'm so happy to see all my friends. Luigi's Baton, Mike, Cadence, and all those smart kids out there who are learning about music.
Well, don't fret, Fred.
Oh, that's funny. Don't fret, because you know Fred means to worry and his name is...
Yeah, I get it. I said it. But we got work to do. We're learning about music because music is...
No.
Fundamental!
He's so cute when he does that.
Today we're learning about rests.
Oh, rests make me very nervous.
Don't sweat, Fred. You can't play all the time. In music, sometimes the silences are as exciting as the sounds.
Wow, muy bueno, Baton.
Thanks, but I already ate.
When you see something that looks like these, that means don't play or sing.
In other words, take a rest.
And just like notes, different kinds of rests have different lengths.
Like this quarter rest means you rest for one beat. See, Mike knows.
This half rest, see? The one that looks like a hat means you rest for 2 beats.
A whole rest like this, the one that hangs down from the line, means be quiet for 4 beats.
These all make me very nervous. What if I make a sound during a rest?
That's why we practice, Fred. If you mess up, you'll get another chance. Didn't you bring us a song today so we can practice our rests?
I sure did.
Come on, everybody. Let's sing a song about rests.
When we sing, when we play,
There's a time to rest.
rests have length.
That we count.
Let us show you how. Whole note followed by whole rest. Sing.
Rest.
Sing.
Rest.
Sing.
Rest.
Sing. Half notes and half rest. Sing.
Rest.
Sing.
Rest.
Sing.
Rest.
Sing.
Rest.
Sing.
Rest.
Sing.
Rest.
Sing. From the beginning.
When we sing,
When we play,
There's a time to rest.
rests have lengths.
that we count.
Let us show you how.
Quarter notes and quarter rest. Watch out, they're tricky.
Sing, rest, sing, sing.
Rest.
Sing, rest, sing, sing.
Rest.
Sing, rest, sing, sing.
Rest.
Sing, rest, sing, sing. Come on, let's sing. Rest, sing, sing.
Rest.
Sing, rest, sing, sing.
Rest.
Sing, rest, sing, sing.
Rest.
Sing. Rests have length that we count. Let us show you
Rest.
now.
Well now, did everyone understand?
You bet, Fred. That was a great song. Thanks for teaching us about rests.
So long, everybody. I need some rest.
We hope to see you real soon, right here on Luigi's Baton
And Mike's
The Music Show.
Enjoy the rest. Sometimes the silences are exciting as the sounds. So let us sing in the rhythm God has given us. Sing, 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 rest. Okay, maybe we shouldn't sing. Sing, 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 rest. It's kind of catchy. That's going to be in your head all day, isn't it? Speak of the rhythm of God. And we also speak of the rest of God. That could be understood in a number of different ways, as if our discussion of God has been incomplete and let's talk about the rest of the things about God. Or we can talk about, more specifically, the Sabbath resting of God. After 7 days, God rested. So in creation narrative, the rest of God, which implies all sorts of theological questions and issues and concerns. But this isn't a systematic theology class. This is the practices of Christian worship class. Until when we talk about the rest of God, we're talking about the Sabbath as the day God has given us. We can rest because of God. We can rest because God has given us a gift of rest. It is the rest that is ordained, offered, an invitation for us to rest. It is the rest of God in worship. Resting is worship. What kind of worship does this involve? It involves taking time away from the burdens, taking time away from the stress, the busyness, the activity, the frenzy, relaxing. And that involves making space. We make space in our lives to listen. We make space in our lives to stop. We make space in our lives for each other, for those who are in our lives who aren't part of our working relationships. We make space for others to speak into our lives, to enjoy others. We make space for enjoyment. What kind of enjoyment? All kinds of enjoyment. Aesthetic enjoyment. We make space for beauty. This picture is a picture taken on the road up to the San Bernardino Mountains, Lake Arrowhead, near Lake Arrowhead, and onwards up to Big Bear Lake, just off the side of the road. Highway 18 is a very busy road. People onwards, to and fro, often going faster than the corners allow, sometimes going slower than the corners allow. It's very easy to get caught up in the busyness of life, in the mountains, down from the mountains. Sometimes you just stop and realize that there is a lake of clouds with islands of mountains and the sun shining. The raven gets it. Raven's just taking time, making space. Aesthetic enjoyment. Look at the beauty around us. Make space for museums, for music, for anything that fills your soul and renews your heart and mind. We celebrate. The Sabbath is a celebration. It's not a burden. It's a celebration of what God has done in us. We remember and we are thankful for the bounty God has given us that allows us to stop and make space. We celebrate God's work. We celebrate those in our lives. We renew and reset our appreciation for what we have. Instead of being caught up in the frenzy and concerned about what we don't have or what we need to do, we celebrate the moment. Legalism is a burden, after all. Legalism is we're always anxious about whether we're breaking the law, about whether we've crossed a boundary, whether we've somehow done something out of way. And there's a lot of elements, even in worship, that have these boundaries, that have these patterns in which we want to achieve and pursue. But Sabbath isn't that. Sabbath is meant for renewal. That was the problem in the Gospels, after all, wasn't it? It wasn't that Jesus was saying, don't follow the Sabbath. Jesus was saying the Sabbath isn't meant to be a burden. It's meant to be renewing. It's meant to be encouraging. It's meant to be empowering. It's meant to be a way of acknowledging the fact that we need rest. And at a certain point, we let go our anxiety over whether we're fulfilling the law, or our anxiety whether other people are fulfilling the law. We're anxious about other people. Stop. Stop for a moment. Rest. Renew yourself. Get perspective. Find discernment. Let your brain wander and rest and enjoy. Healing, then, which we see in the Gospels, is an expression, not a violation of true Sabbath. That's what Jesus was trying to encourage. When he healed on the Sabbath, he wasn't violating the Sabbath. He was really expressing it. The idea that those who are burdened by their own disabilities or their own frustrations, they too get healing. They get relief. They get rest. They get rest from the burdens. They get rest from the frustrations. and they can truly celebrate. It is the rest of God. God allows us to rest. God encourages us to rest. God commands us to rest. Sabbath is also a festival of creation. The festival is an expression of feast and celebration. Connecting it with the love feast. If you know your early church history, you know that the early Eucharist celebrations, Thanksgiving celebrations, were fully meals. We see this in 1 Corinthians and other mentions. Meals of celebration in which they gather together in Christ to celebrate what Christ has done, and in the power of the Spirit, living this out in a new way. The early expressions of this can be found in Justin Martyr and in Tertullian of what a love feast is. The image here is that of the wedding feast, where Jesus turns water into wine as an expression, a miracle of celebration, honoring the gathering, honoring the moment. An agape feast is one in which celebrates each other, celebrates the goodness of God. It involves renewal and activity in the process of physical refreshment. So creation itself is given rest, it's given encouragement, it's given this space. It's celebratory. It's communal. When we think of the festival of salvation, if you think of a festival, can you be at a festival by yourself? Can you feast by yourself? Maybe, but when we think of feasting by yourself, we tend to think more of gluttony. Feasting is a gathering of people celebrating with the goodness of life. And it's satisfying. It's hard to rest when you're anxious or unfilled. So satisfying is a place where we rest because we have what we need. We can celebrate. And part of that is a recognition of what we need isn't all that we want. But it's satisfying in that this is what you need. It is God is enough. Just like when the manna came, that is enough. And it's nutritious. The feast is nutritious. It's renewing. It's not just a bunch of junk food. The feast is celebratory, communal, and satisfying in a way that actually renews us from within. And it's welcoming. Feast welcomes others. A feast invites others. A Sabbath is a way of responding to those around us, saying, come, join us in our rest. Come, put down your burden. You who are weary, put down your burden. Read Isaiah 55. That is a festival celebration. Come who are thirsty. Come who are hungry. You'll be satisfied. You'll find rest. Sabbath is the hope for the world. When we think of this world, when we think of our work, we can be so overwhelmed if we don't have any sense of end. We say, if I can only get through the next 8 weeks, I'll be fine. If we can only get to the end, and it spurs us onwards to this hope that there's rest in the midst of burden and chaos and anxiety. What do we do in that rest? We celebrate, we play, we interact. This hope for the world mitigates our expectations. It's so easy to get caught up in all the things that we should do, our 5-year plans, our goals, our busyness, our comparison with others. We get caught up in that anxiety and that tension, and we lose sight of who God has called us to be. When we're thinking of calling, the idea of Sabbath mitigates our expectations so that our hope isn't in our achievement or the pressure we put on ourselves, but our hope is in what God is doing, how God has called us, how God has empowered us. It creates an approachable reward. Every 7 days, you get to stop. Can you make it to Friday? Or whatever day you choose to take off? That's one of the issues for some of us. The patterns, especially in ministry, the patterns of life aren't that we can take off a Saturday or a Sunday. So taking off once every 7 days is itself a rhythm. Now there's arguments that the 7th day is itself specific, but in the work of Christ and Peter, his vision of the inclusion of Gentiles, we're limited from the exact nature, and we can find a rhythm, I believe, that allows us to orient within the calling God has given us. So maybe it's a Tuesday, Friday that you take off. And however it works, creating an approachable reward gives us hope that we can just press on through and that we see the end. And it may not be the biggest, it may not be the answer, it may not be the ultimate accomplishment. But having a small reward allows us to press onward. It's the oasis in the midst of the journey. The assumption of rest, as I said, invites exertion. If we know we're going to be able to rest, we're able to press forward with more efficiency, with more energy than if we thought we need to conserve and order our lives in case we don't ever get to rest. If you know you're going to rest on a certain day, you'll work very much harder. It allows us to focus in that way, instead of being caught up in the patterns and rules and assumptions that's created by those around us or by our own expectation. Having an approachable reward, having our expectations mitigated, having our focus renewed on the hope in God allows us to focus on the task at hand. I know for me, I tend to get caught up in so many different thoughts that I lose my sense of the present. And in losing the sense of the present, I lose the sense of the thing that I should do now. We get so caught up in all the work that we have to do and all in the big picture that we lose sight of the first step we need to take. So we can focus on the tasks at hand. And we can also release. The things we can't get done in the course of a week, just let it go. It's not up to you. It's up to God. There are things that we can't force ourselves to do, and working ourselves to the bone is not necessarily God's calling for us. And if we can't do it in light of the time that we have been given, then we let it go. We release it. We let go and have God orient us in grace. It's our hope. Our hope is that it's not up to us. Our hope is that we're not ultimately responsible for bringing everything to completion, that the promise is God's promise. And we have to release the promise to God, and the Sabbath is an expression of this release. Where does our hope come from? Is it in our own energy? Is it our own intelligence? Is it in our own ambition? That's what much of the world says. So we hope for the world in saying that the world's hope isn't us. The world's hope is God. So we let go trying to think that it's up to us, even as we're called to have participation in our calling. It awakens possibilities. In this, in letting go, we see beyond our own abilities, and we begin to see the possibilities of God's work, the possibilities of others around us. We stop saying we have to do everything, and we start saying, if I have to take this day off, then other people have to step in, so they have possibilities. And they who also take a day off give space for others. We invite others in our rest, and we awaken others in their role and work. We see what is possible around us by stopping for a little bit, reflecting, letting our brain rest and our mind unknot the tensions. It relativizes burdens and responsibilities. Are you the one who's going to bring your calling into completion? Are you the one, if you don't do this or that or the other thing, your life will fall apart? Well, where's your faith in God? Abraham couldn't bring an heir in his own power. They were too old. Abraham and Sarah were too old. But they tried, and they caused all sorts of problems. In having faith, we say, the burden that God has given us is light. The responsibilities that God has given us are real, but they don't depend on our own power. So we say, how is it that we're walking in the Spirit? It invites discernment. Sabbath is worship because we let go. The feeling that everything is up to us, that we have to keep working nonstop in order to make our way in this world. The Sabbath then is a very immediate expression of God's lordship. If we say God is Lord, but try to do everything on ourselves and try to mandate everyone around us and control everyone around us, that's expressing in our life that God isn't Lord, that we're trying to impose our own will on ourselves and others around us. Sabbath is the only way I can stop is by saying, ultimately, everything's up to God. We let go. And we say, God is the one in charge of my career. God is the one in charge of my schooling. God is the one in charge of my relationships. So in the Sabbath, we proclaim God as Lord. In resting, in stopping, because that is the ironic element. In stopping, we're proclaiming God's lordship. When God asks us to worship Him, we're not being asked to pursue these expressions of salvation in order to earn our salvation. We're not called to these sacrifices. We're called to stop and rest. Because rest often takes more trust than doing another deed. Our hope is in God. Our hope for us is in God. Our hope for the world is in God. Where does our hope come from? Where does your hope come from? How you are patterning your life this week express your hope? Think about your schedule this last week. Where are you putting your hope? Where does how you live your life express what is Lord, and where is your hope in your life? Live life so that your hope is expressed in word and deed, that God is the one who is in charge. Sabbath then is a tithe of our time, 1/7 of our time given to God. And what does God offer? He says rest. God, as an example, rests from His creation. God, as an expression of our worship, invites us to rest. So are we going to tithe our time? It's much easier to tithe our money than it is to tithe our time. And when we work in ministry, we think all our time is given to this work of God, so we think that is our tithe. That's not it. God doesn't ask for that. When God says a tithe of our time, he's saying, let your time rest. Let your land rest. Let those around you rest. And if we're not giving rest, we're not giving the tithe in the way that God invites us to. God loves us, and God promises rest. So play. Enjoy your family. Enjoy the water. Enjoy that which is around you. Sabbath also is an expression of hope and liberation. In hope, in being hope for the world. It's not just a future hope. It's an expression of hope even in the moment. When we participate in Sabbath, we're saying, let everything be free to rest. Sabbath expresses the relegation of the systems beneath the overarching system of God, and is exemplified in the self-similar scaling of Sabbath rest. Why, yes, I am a theology professor. What does this mean? The world is full of systems. We have the economic system, the education system, the legal system, the religious system. Go down the list. There's all these separate systems in our life that we're responsible for, and they're not necessarily cohesive. And so we're pulled in all these different directions to perform and to find meaning and purpose in these different systems as a way of participating in society. Each of these can become their own gods. The economic system says, I am the one who gives you meaning and identity. The legal system says, I am the way that gives you meaning and identity. The political system, the religious system, all these things have ways of pulling us different directions. So we're not a cohesive self. We're this collection of different kinds of things in participation, anonymous, in as much as we're giving ourselves over to these different systems. Well, the statement of creation, the story of creation, is really intended as a way to respond to something like that. In ancient eras, it wasn't that they had these systems as gods, but they had all these different gods. There's a god of the rivers, there's a god of the trees, there's gods of the forest and the land and the birds, and whatever thing you were trying to do in life, you went to this different god and you said, how can I worship this god in order to get the thing that I want? If you need rain for your farm, you get rain. You worship this one god. If you need success in war, you worship another god. Well, the creation then is saying, God is the God of everything. God created the light and the dark, the land and the sea, the birds and the fish. What is God God of? God is God of everything. Think of something in your life. Anything. God's the God of that. Think of something else. God's the God of that too. One more thing. Think of anything random in your life. God is the God of that. The Sabbath, then, is an expression that all the different parts of our lives, all the things we think we need to do in order to find meaning and purpose and value, all the things that we judge other people about, all those things God is actually the God of. And when God says rest, we are saying God is giving us a command, giving us an encouragement in contrast to these other demands that are coming in our life. Those things aren't the Lord of us. So the Sabbath expresses the idea that all the other systems in this world are beneath the system of God. And when God says rest, it relativizes those systems beneath his lordship. And we see in God's command the Sabbath not just being about the seventh day rest in terms of the order of what has been created, but everything. So God every 7 days says rest. God every 7 years says there's this bigger rest. And every seventh year, there's a bigger rest than that resets society. The seventh day enjoins all people to stop, to let go one day for the sake of rest. Take a risk by resting. Resting is risk, because in resting we say we can stop and other people won't race by us. And if everyone rests, then we're all in a creation of part of society where that rest becomes part of the system. Think of race cars. They take pit stops. What if one car was able to do the whole race without ever having to refuel or get new tires? Well, then they never stop. But the cars need rest. And if a car doesn't take a pit stop, it runs out of gas and loses the race. We think the race is of one kind, and God says no. This journey, this way, the way of Jesus Christ is another, and the way encourages everyone to take rest. The seventh day then scales into a seventh year. The land itself is rest. Let the land lie fallow. Don't plan this way. Now, they didn't know the science behind that, but we do in our day. We know that certain plants draw different nutrients out of the land, and if you overplant soon the land is no longer going to be able to support anything, and it just dies. But if you give it rest, the land renews. If you let something else grow there, it renews. So this is an ecological embrace. The Sabbath embraces the world. When we assume that God is only about the care of people and that we can do whatever we want with the land, you're violating the very nature of God's commandment in the Old Testament. God cares about the land, and the Sabbath year becomes an expression of the love. The love that Christ so loved the world, the cosmos, that he sent his son, is a way of renewing this interconnectivity of the humanity and the environment. We're called to participate in the world that God has given us, in the rhythms that God has given us. And that means we take rest, and that means we give rest. People are not to oppress themselves. They're not to oppress each other. And they're not to oppress the land. If we lose that balance, we find ourselves in chaos. And then we justify this chaos by all kinds of other religious insensibility or religious excuses. But the very core nature of the Sabbath expresses that even the land needs rest. And it culminates in the Sabbath of Sabbaths. Once every seventh years, 49 years, the year of Jubilee. And this holistic freedom confronts the accumulation of pride and despair and objectification. In the year of Jubilee, those who have been enslaved are freed. When you bought and sold land that has pushed because of debts or other things, because you can't afford to hold on to the land comes back to you and your family. Everything's reset. Hope and liberation of humanity and the world takes place in the patterns of God's cycle, so that we all in this rhythm experience and express hope, so that we're never so burdened by despair or so burdened by pride that we think ourselves outside the concern of God. We can no longer see the world or other people as simply objects for our use, but everything is given meaning and identity. The people are freed. The land is freed. Patterns are reset. Society is itself reborn, and reborn with a renewed perspective on the Lordship of God. It's reborn in light of God's gift. It is born again, yet again. It is given this new pattern so that all the accumulated chaos and frenzy and assumptions are freed. It's rebooted. The land, the people, the patterns are to rest, to let go, to be redeemed, to return, because the overarching pattern of humanity is neither civil society, nor economic, nor any other prevailing system. At the end of the chapter where he talks about the year of Jubilee, which we talked about earlier, he says, "For to me the people of Israel are servants. They are my servants whom I brought out from the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." We are God's servants. And being God's servants, we can't treat others as though they are our servants alone. They are servants of God, and this identity then supersedes every other definition and obligation, every other system. The year of Jubilee then is the year of liberation, liberating the oppressed from their oppression and the oppressors from their oppressed, reinvigorating the society by a declaration of God's lordship. In the acts of Jubilee, the people declare their trust in God's faithfulness, rather than their dependence on the systems for meaning and security. Every system is relegated beneath the worth of God, God's worth as Lord, the worth that God gives to each person, the worth that God gives to the creation that he saw, that he made, that he said was very good, beneath the worth of God. So humanity and the whole ecological context are then placed in a renewed perspective. The liberated people of Israel were called into a new way of being, and the Sabbath was this ultimate expression. The self-similar patterns of Sabbath, set free by God for freedom with God, a freedom that then entailed responsibility for how they lived and how they responded to others. Even if sometimes they got caught up in unfortunate patterns or assumptions, there was always this moment where the Sabbath called them back. Worship, by understanding the responsibility of being responsible to God. They were to be a people with a new narrative, living in a new system that relegates the other systems of society beneath the overarching lordship of God. They were to be free, but not free to oppress. Free, but not free to depersonalize others. They were to be free with the land, not free to do whatever they wanted with the land. If this sounds less like freedom, it's because we have far too long equated freedom with doing whatever we want, without regard to others around us, an individualized freedom. The freedom of God is a communal freedom, a freedom that is empowered in light of God's lordship. Is a freedom to eat all the plants, but don't eat that one fruit. Freedom within community always has boundaries that maximize the freedom for all. We have freedom, but in having freedom with responsibility, we have a freedom that invites others to join us in their freedom. These boundaries don't have to be legal and shouldn't be. If we are living in light of God, we respond to each other with the love that God offers. And in fact, the law itself can become yet another form of restrictive authoritarianism by those who interpret and arbitrate the law. Corruption in approaches to power and approaches to money. We can use ways of mandating control over people as a way of talking about responsibility to others, but really we've secured power to ourselves. Sabbath at each scale, then, is a release. It's an acknowledgement of our responsibility to God, to others, to ourselves, and to this world. We are to stop, at least for a while. And in stopping, at least for a while, we let go our assumptions of self, whether we're in a place of oppression or oppressee. We let go our assumptions of others, whether they're in a place of oppression or oppressee. We honor God by offering our time, our space, our sense of meaning to God. And in that, we participate in a new kind of rhythm. That's not outside this world. That's what this world was intended to be, but is what this world pushes against. We live out a new narrative embedded in this world, in the context of the world, a fractal narrative that expresses in manifold ways as we live in a new way, among others. Is initiated in creation, but Sabbath is also oriented eschatologically. So the Sabbath is really an expression of eschatology. The resurrection initiated a day of new beginnings. What happened in the resurrection was not simply what happens in the normal course of events. That if Jesus died and then took Saturday off and then of course rose again. No. Coming back to life after the crucifixion was not the regular pattern of things. The Saturday between Good Friday and Easter Sunday was not just a regular Sabbath. It was initiating a work of God in time itself. We don't rest because we have done all the things that need to be done and that we can stop because it's all finished. The life is finished. No, we stop because even though things aren't done, we say we still can rest because what needs to be done as a hope for the world and the rhythm of life invites us to rest. So we don't rest because of the past. We rest because of our hope in the future. We rest. We relegate everything. Everything becomes relative to what God commands because our hope is in something beyond us. The early church saw then Sunday as the Sabbath initiating a new day of life, eschatological experience of the resurrection, orienting us into a new pattern of life. It is the great Sabbath. We look for the great Sabbath of resurrection in the moment life of Jesus that then extends, reorients all of history so that we look for the great Sabbath of his return in which we can rest eternally in the presence of God. This is from the Epistle of Barnabas, 15, which was written in the early 2nd century. Further, also, it is written concerning the Sabbath in the Decalogue, which the Lord spoke face to face to Moses on Mount Sinai. And sanctify the Sabbath of the Lord with clean hands and a pure heart. And he says in another place, if my sons keep the Sabbath, then will I cause my mercy to rest upon them. The Sabbath is mentioned at the beginning of creation. And God made in 6 days the work of his hands, and made an end on the 7th day, and rested on it, and sanctified it. Attend, my children, to the meaning of this expression. He finished in 6 days. This implies that the Lord will finish all things in 6,000 years, for a day is with him 1,000 years, and he himself testifies, saying, behold, today will be as 1,000 years. Therefore, my children, in 6 days, that is, in 6,000 years, all things will be finished. And he rested on the 7th day. This means that when his Son, coming, shall destroy the time of the wicked man, and judge the ungodly, and change the sun and the moon and the stars, then shall he truly rest on the 7th day. Moreover, he says, you shall sanctify it with pure hands and a pure heart. If therefore anyone can now sanctify the day which God has sanctified, except he is pure in heart in all things, we are deceived. Behold, therefore, certainly then one properly resting sanctifies it. When we ourselves, having received the promise, wickedness no longer existing, and all things have been made new by the Lord, shall be able to work righteousness, then we shall be able to sanctify it, having been first sanctified ourselves. Further, he says to them, your new moons and your Sabbath I cannot endure. Perceive how he speaks. Your present Sabbaths are not acceptable to me. But that is which I have made, when, giving rest to all things, I shall make a beginning of the 8th day, that is, a beginning of another world. Wherefore also we keep the 8th day with joyfulness, the day also on which Jesus rose again from the dead. And when he had manifested himself, he ascended into the heavens. Now we might have quibbles with some of the theology here. The return of Jesus. Is Jesus going to return in 6,000 years from the time this was written? Maybe. maybe not, but see how the early church saw the Sabbath in an eschatological way, as a way of reflecting our experience of the world, but also beyond our experience of the world. Resting, but also participating with God. In resting and acknowledging the rest that God gives, we're acknowledging that we can't fulfill this ourselves, but we need the righteousness of God. And in being given the righteousness of God, we have a new beginning. In the midst of this new beginning, we live in a new way, in a rhythm of the new way, so that in celebrating the resurrection of Christ, we're called to live out this reality in the present as if all the things that God will do in the future have already taken place. The day on which Jesus rose again initiated a new rhythm within the bigger rhythms of the world. And this rhythm includes letting things go, acknowledging the Lordship, participating because we have hope, resting because we can rest in God, being willing to let go because our hope isn't in our performance, but our hope is in the thing that God has promised He's going to do and has already initiated. We celebrate the 8th day as Christians as we honor the God who was, who is, and is to come, in the work of Christ, in the power of the Spirit, as we live in the rhythm, the rest, the feast, and the hope of God. The Sabbath, then, is our eschatological expression of worship. The Sabbath is our expression of the creative order in eschatological assumption. We say in resting and stopping that we believe God is the Lord of what has happened, but because God is Lord, we can rest. God calls us to rest, and in the resurrection we are given the rest, pulled out of the curse that humanity was given in the beginning, in the earliest sin. We can rest. God invites us to rest, to be prepared in each moment, and being prepared, also resting as part of that preparation. We rest because we rest in God. God is the one making all things new. What does it mean for the Sabbath to be a practice? It means letting go. I've said this again and again. Let go. Let go the things that you think are so much your responsibility that you're overwhelmed, that you don't see how you're going to pull it off, and yet it becomes a definition of you. It becomes an orientation for how you treat others around you, whether in trying to use them or because of your stress, you're diminishing their presence and contributions. Let go. Let go the things that are defining you, the systems that are trying to demand of you. And the Sabbath is an expression of letting go. This is a Sabbath expression. The Sabbath is an expression of God's lordship. The Sabbath is an expression of our humanity. The Sabbath makes space for others. The Sabbath relativizes our responsibility. The Sabbath is actually participating in the rhythms of how God has created us. Brain chemistry is affected by our ability to rest. If we don't sleep every night, what happens to our brain? It gets very overwhelmed, and we actually can die of lack of sleep. If we don't rest regularly, our brain gets knotted up. Stopping for a day helps us to find renewal. Our brain, our body, our whole functioning works better. God invites us to rest because God, in being created, in the creator of us, knows how we function. And we don't know how we function. We've lost our instruction manual. So God says rest. And slowly we're catching up by the science behind that. And renewal. It allows us to see better, to think better. We find recreation in recreation. This picture is of Santa Rosa Island. A trail, encouragement, a path, a way to and from. Enjoy that which is around us. Walk free. Rest. Stop. Celebrate. Feast. Pray. Renew your perspective of God's work. Enjoy the Sabbath. Stop. When we see the Sabbath as practice, we can get so overwhelmed with what it means and what we need to do, and get caught up in the busyness and make the Sabbath yet another cycle of burden for us. Just stop. Sit for a while. Stop. How do you find refreshment and renewal? Where is the place you find refreshment and renewal? What are the things, what are your hobbies? What are ways in which you can relax? This is me and my wife, again, also on Santa Rosa Island, near the coast. This is my happy place. I don't get there every 7 days. These, when I've been sitting here or any of the islands, it's this renewing of God's perspective in the midst of what God has created. And with Amy, it becomes this sense of God's bounty for my life. This picture was taken when we were, before we had kids. She was pregnant and started first experience morning sickness in the middle of this trip, which caused chaos for her, and yet that was celebratory in its own way because we were having a daughter born on Easter Sunday 2012. We celebrate that. We celebrate her birthdays. We celebrate her contributions. We celebrate our son who was born A couple years later, we celebrate these moments together as a family. We celebrate these moments together as a couple. We celebrate these moments together with the community of people who have also been here. We celebrate with nature, with the feast of creation. This is where I find refreshment, and I hope to go back here before too long as a reminder and a renewal. So how do you find refreshment and renewal? Do that. That's simple. Stop. Think about how you find refreshment and renewal. Do that. Take a break and do something you enjoy. Maybe you can't take the whole day today, but take a break and do something you enjoy for a moment as a reminder, a Sabbath within the day. If there are every 7 days we can rest, and every 7 years we're called to a bigger rest, and every seventh year we're called to an even grander societal rest, then even as the Sabbath scales larger, I assume the Sabbath also scales smaller. Take a rest every 7 minutes. Take a rest every 7 hours. See what happens. Take a break. Do something you enjoy. Enjoy the people you enjoy. See them as people again. Recognize them. Celebrate them. Celebrate God, what God has done, and give them space and rest. Spend time with friends and family in a non-intentional session of just enjoying each other's company. Play games. Enjoy a shared activity. Sit. Talk. This is different than solitude. It's freeform. It's inviting. It's a way of letting go the things and demands and the schedules and the burdens and enjoying that which is around us in the way that is around us. We let go our anticipations and expectations of the future, and we sit in the moment and we recognize that God is good and that God does good things, and God invites us to rest together as a renewing way of life with each other and with this world. Hope for the world. Hope within the world. The hope of God. Hope invited by the Spirit draws us together. And in making space, we rest, and we rest with God. God rests with us. Sabbath.
May the Lord protect and defend you. May He always shield you from shame. May you come to be in Israel a shining name. May you be like Ruth and like Esther. May you be deserving of praise. Strengthen them, O Lord, and keep them from the strangers' ways. May God bless you and grant you long life. May the Lord fulfill our Sabbath prayer for you. May God make you good mothers and wives. May He send you husbands who will care for you. May the Lord protect and defend. May the Lord protect and defend. May the Lord preserve you from pain. May the Lord preserve you from pain. Favor them, O happiness and happiness, for hear our Sabbath prayer.
Peace to you, and also rest. May you have a peaceful rest as a practice of Christian worship. That is the assignment this week. Rest and be renewed in all things. Shabbat Shalom.